My name is Tom. I work as part of an emergency ambulance crew for the London Ambulance Service. Describe myself in 3 words. Happy, antisocial and generous. Because I enjoy my own company more than anybody else's, and I don't enjoy having to be out of my comfort zone, should we say. What was my first thought of the day? Is it raining? Getting overwhelmed by things that I can't control. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I struggle with the most. And I think that's something that I've kind of only recently recognised that I struggle with, and something that I'm working to kind of rectify. I recognised it was more of a problem, whereas because it was mainly external factors which contribute to the way that I feel. I always felt it was kind of something outside of my control, and it just was part of my personality to kind of get annoyed or worked up by things that I couldn't control. It's more kind of anger more than anything. Yeah, I mean, it's especially the past 18 months, I think that's probably highlighted it more for me. You know, going through everything that's been going through with the pandemic, and it being such a time in my life where I've relied so much on what other decisions that people make. I found it just completely overwhelming. The fact that I was just getting annoyed by somebody who wasn't wearing a mask maybe on public transport, or wasn't keeping their distance. So yeah, I think definitely over the past 18 months I've recognised it more as a problem. And definitely since the beginning of the year, I knew that I needed to do something about it. I get an eye twitch, and if I get so stressed about something, and because I feel like it's out of my control and I can't do anything about it, it manifests itself in an eye twitch, which kind of then gives me a signal that it's gone too far. I didn't handle the pandemic very well up until around about 6 months ago, where I felt like it all just kind of came to a head. And I wasn't managing it very well. I isolated myself like too much, in the sense of not talking to people about how I felt with work, and just kind of day-to-day life. And I kept a lot of it within. I think I was so used to doing that from such a younger age, that I felt like that was the best way to that was the strategy that I'd use to kind of cope with everything that's been going on in the past 18 months. And it really did come to a head. I was involved in an incident at work, and it was just the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge, really. And that was the thing that made me realise that I needed to seek help. I needed to talk to somebody, and I needed to be honest with my family and my girlfriend. And looking back now, I recognise that if I'd spoken about it earlier, then I probably wouldn't have got to the point that I did a few months ago. Selfishness is the thing that I've been trying to. I think there's two strands to it. The one thing is I overanalyse everything, and I recognise now that just causes paralysis. I just overthink it, and then I can't focus on anything else, and I get so worked up about things. But it generally is general selfishness, because I can't understand why people do certain things, and can't recognise how that affects other people. And I think the job that I do, we're always about trying to put the patient first, and then when you see people who choose a course of action that doesn't, and possibly puts other people at harm, I think that's the thing that kind of affects me the most. I think the best is finding someone who's willing to listen, whether that's a professional, whether that's family, or whether that's a friend. I found that that's what helped me the most. And I probably wasn't ready to kind of take the opportunity to speak to my girlfriend and my family, so I went to professional help kind of quite early on. And I found that his techniques and the way that he listened to me, the counsellor that I spoke to, was kind of what I needed the most. So I think if anybody asks me now, it is about, it might be that you have somebody in your family, it might be that you have a friend or a work colleague, or it may be that you have to seek professional help, but is there somebody out there who can listen to you? Because I think that's the key thing. It's listening without judgment. It's somebody who listens to what you have to say, and like I say, doesn't cast judgment upon it. I think a really simple thing people can do is like Google kind of active listening, because there is there are different strategies, there are different ways that you can listen to somebody. And listening isn't about thinking about what you're going to say next. It's about giving that person that space to kind of say what they want to say. And I find that with my job sometimes, that actually for somebody just to have that opportunity to speak to somebody, and for me not to know anything about them, and for me just to give them that space and that time, that opportunity for them to speak is it kind of opens up other things that are going on in their life which they may have not felt comfortable talking to somebody. But because there's not that judgment, because there's not that kind of how quickly can I respond, just gives them that time to be as open and honest as they possibly can be. Two things, so I meditate, or kind of mindfulness, and I exercise. Well, I'd say they're the two best things for me. When I had an incident at work that I felt was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, and I recognised that I'd heard good things about it, and I'd seen how it kind of had a positive impact on other people's lives. So I decided to give it a go, and I definitely found within kind of with 3 or 4 weeks of doing it that it had a massive impact. At the time I didn't do anything. It was always kind of pushing it down the road, and I don't know if it was hope or the fact that we were in something so new that I didn't really know how long it was going to go on for. It was almost, can I get to the end of the week? Can I get to the end of this run of shifts? And then maybe I'll look back and try and deal with it. I recognise now that that was just the wrong way to do it, and I recognise now that I needed coping mechanisms, I needed strategies to deal with the stress of the job, or I had to move out of my home because I didn't understand the risks of what bringing the virus back would be to my family and to people who live with us. And I recognise now that I maybe didn't manage or cope with any of the kind of extra stress that brought at the time. Unfortunately for me, it took a moment of feeling kind of overwhelmed with it, and not being able to cope, that I recognised that I needed to kind of develop those strategies and those ways of kind of coping with the stress. Quit my job? Probably no. I would say I would definitely talk more. I wouldn't work as much, 100%. I found it too easy to work kind of multiple shifts in a row. Focus on my sleep a lot more. I was doing a lot of night shifts over that time. I was getting very poor sleep, and that was just kind of playing havoc with everything else. That definitely had a massive impact on my mental health. Yeah, especially during the pandemic, it was quite relentless. We maybe would go to somebody who was, as we would term, like big six, or somebody who's actually really unwell. That you might see 1 or 2 people in a run of 4 shifts. But there were times when we were going to 3 or 4 people in a row who were very unwell. And I think one of the hardest things that we had to do was because we weren't allowed to take family, or family weren't allowed to visit, it was telling those family or asking those family, you need to say goodbye. And when people just go, see you later, we'll give you a call, and then you have to kind of impress upon them that this might be the last time you're seeing them because they're very unwell. Although the strange thing about this virus has been is that some people have kind of compensated so well that they haven't maybe been as sick to the family, look as sick to the family as they do to us when we take all our observations. So that was definitely one of the hardest things to know that, and I don't know the number for exactly, but there would have been people that we took out of their homes who never returned. The thing is with the job that I do, and I it's all relative at the end of the day, but unfortunately this job takes something from you, and sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what has gone or what's been taken, but there are just times in your life where you recognise actually that my job's impacting. Maybe it's just listening to somebody else and you've had a really long day of it, and you don't want to listen to your family member at home, and unfortunately you've just had a day of people talking at you and telling you how bad their lives are, and then when you come home and you want that break and you don't get that, you can't then be that person that your partner or your family want you to be. But I think for the first 2 weeks it was a right jolly up, because I was going to a buffet breakfast every morning and I thought, this is the life, I get to have a fry up every morning. I'd definitely say after about 10, 14 days, 2 weeks, whatever it was, it kind of, yeah, like you say, there was this, it felt like a continuous loop of just, this is part of your work life. You're in a hotel with everybody else who does the same job. The people you see in the morning for breakfast are the people who you work with. So yeah, definitely after a very short period of time, which I thought I'd be able to kind of, you know, get through, I did miss those kind of home comforts. Same crewmate for 2 years now, and not to give him too much credit or praise, I would definitely say that I'd like to think that we helped each other through like the kind of past 18 months, and definitely knowing that you get in an ambulance with him at the beginning of a shift definitely made it a lot easier to kind of to face the day. It's very rare that you work with somebody that you don't feel like they have your back and you don't have theirs, but I think that's one of the nice kind of dynamics about the job that I do. You know, you get given an ambulance and then you're out on the road for 12 hours and you're with that same person for 12 hours, and you very quickly build a relationship with that person, and it might even just be one shift where you've had a job that you'll never forget, and you always know then you've got that tie, that bond to that person, which is nice. I think there are certain aspects of the media, and I suppose it touches on social media as well, which can make it very difficult for people to feel like they can speak out. And whether that's because of the people who they kind of look up to, see it as a weakness that if you talk about your kind of mental health issues. I think it's about, in society, making it easier for people to talk about their mental health. Like, you know, you can understand it to a certain extent. Nobody's going to walk around and tell everybody they've got diarrhea, but you can understand that, you know, when you're having a bit of a down day, you're going to go and tell somebody. So, yeah, I'd like to think that we could move to more of a place where people are going to feel more confident to speak about it. I think it's an expectation from society of how you're meant to be as a male or as a man, and I think it's impossible to achieve. I really do. And I think that comes down to our culture, it comes down to our media, and unfortunately, I mean, can you imagine if we lived in a world where we had a media who were just very open about talking about mental health? It would just be completely different. Certain personalities who, you know, are on TV a lot or on social media, if they spoke up more, it would make it a lot more open. Yeah, I think that we should be talking about it more in primary schools. In my job, I've been to 6, 7-year-olds who are struggling with their mental health. And it's difficult for me, as somebody who's trained in kind of dealing with these situations, to ever expect a parent to know what to do in those situations. So I think as an effort there should be that teachers and pupils should have that access throughout primary schools. I think some of the charities that do go into schools, they have a huge impact, and they have great success in kind of making kids understand what they're going through. And I think with the access to social media and the internet now and the pressures that places upon young people, I think it's more important than ever. You can't get away from it, which is the saddest part. I mean, I've got 3 nieces and a young nephew, and you know, they're all going through it. And to know that once they've left school, it doesn't end. Unfortunately, that they can be got at when should be in the safety of their home. I think it makes it all the harder for parents. And yeah, how do you kind of manage a 15-year-old girl who, you know, wants to be on Instagram? How do you deal with that? I wouldn't be able to deal with it. So 3 things I'm grateful for. I'd say my girlfriend, tea, and Jack Grealish. Yeah, and just looking forward to, you know, kind of life getting relatively back to normal over the next kind of 12 to 18 months. Going on holiday, look forward to that.